Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video. And this week, our build begins in the spaceplane hangar, because today's mission will see us bringing 2 racing rovers to the mountainous Mun poles, and I generally find it easier to build rovers in the spaceplane hangar. Speaking of the subject of today's video, it's a funny one really. I have been exceedingly busy this week. The 3 of you that follow my Planet Coaster series will be aware that my work hours have been temporarily extended into the evenings. The reason for this is that I am, well, a clinician in the eye department of an NHS hospital in my real job in quotes there, air quotes, and our waiting times are currently quite dangerously long. So to help mitigate this, we're all working 8:30 till 7 during the week in order to increase our clinic capacity and try and bring down those waiting times. However, this does leave me with very little free time to work on Kerbal Space Program videos after work now. And additionally, my house seems to have had a bit of a mold problem, so I've had to spend a good couple of evenings this week spraying and washing down all the affected areas with bleach and mold killer. And then I've been ensuring that the rest of my house undergoes a nice deep clean to prevent anything from coming back. On top of that, my parents are visiting this weekend. They're coming over on Friday afternoon, so tomorrow for me. So my effective making KSP YouTube video time, in air quotes again, has effectively been reduced to about 4 hours a week. So I racked my brain trying to think of an interesting and entertaining mission idea that would also not take too long to execute this week, and I remembered a mission plan that I used to really enjoy doing back when I was still a fairly new player to this game. The Mun has some extremely mountainous, jagged, and overall just very interesting terrain at its poles. I used to like the challenge of trying to land a vessel somewhere deep within the mountainous ranges without having it fall over or skid down a hill or what have you. I haven't done a mission like that for a few years now, so I thought that, I take this week's limited time budget to take a little trip down memory lane and also bring you all along for the ride with me. However, I then had another idea. It's all well and good just landing in the mountains, but it would be cool if we could have something to do while we're there. So I thought to myself, what do people tend to do on mountains? And I then thought they'd die of oxygen starvation, of course. But when that doesn't happen, people tend to try and slide down the slopes on various vehicles, such as snowboards, skis, or sleds. Vehicles, pulling a little bit of legwork in that sentence there. I really liked the mental image of a Kerbal going tobogganing, so I thought I'd try and set up a sledding race down the Mun slopes. Now obviously sleds don't really work in this game, so I've instead created these soapbox derby races, as in unpowered carts with wheels that don't have any brakes or motors. We're just going to go for a free roll down some slopes in a race, and it's going to be pretty fun, I hope. There is me finishing the lander. There's not much really to comment on other than the fact that it has space for 3 Kerbals, 1 to be the judge, the other 2 to be the racers, and then, you may notice it has a very broad base because we're going to be landing at the top of a hill that might be a bit of an uneven surface. You don't want it toppling over, I should say. If you have a very tall lander with a very narrow base, it'll be very wobble heavy. Very squat lander with a broad base should be pretty stable, so that's kind of part of the design influence there. For the rocket itself, kind of this weird shape, really. I mean, granted, the Kerbal Space Program Instagram account is currently doing a public competition in which you have to design a weird-looking rocket, so I guess this could kind of be my submission, even though it's not really that weird. I don't plan on entering this competition, so this is basically the best you've got, probably. That being said, I don't know what next week's video will be. I have made a video before where I sent a giant yeet sign through a Mun arch, so who knows where next week might take us. I don't tend to think too far ahead in the future, so, here's to next week, maybe. He could be adding the solar panels, actually. I did actually launch this thing beautifully into orbit, and then realised I didn't have any batteries or solar panels on the command modules. That was an oof. Had to go back and quickly revert and add them, but I'm getting ahead of myself, because this is, of course, the last thing we need to add to this ship before we can go ahead and launch it into space. I always say the words launch it into space as if, actually come to think of it, a lot of Kerbal launches don't actually ultimately end up in space. So maybe it is a worthwhile thing to add to the end of that sentence. Either way, here we are on the launch pad ready to launch this thing into space. So we throttle up that twin bore engine first of all, and then decouple the launch clamps and sail off on our way. Now this is in real time. We can cut some sped up footage just so this video doesn't go on too long. The twin bore is an interesting engine, really. It's mainly used, because that's what it was designed for, as a side booster to complement either Mammoth or Mastodon stages. The Mastodon stage is just like, the Saturn V size boosters or Mammoth engine size boosters. These kind of complement those as secondary boosters, but the twin bore is also very good as a main stage as well. It's basically like one step up from the mainsail, which I think is the engine you're supposed to use for 2.5 meter diameter craft. Their main engine, but twin bore, you know, looks cool. That's it actually. It looks cool, but it also has a higher thrust as well compared to the mainsail. And we do have a fairly heavy payload, so I thought let's just make sure we're definitely going to have enough thrust to weight ratio and splash out on a nice twin bore engine before dumping it into the sea. As you can see, we've just attached it there. Goodbye, twin bore. Thank you, twin bore, for everything you've done for us. Now we can fire up the second. I don't know what that was. Now we're firing up the second stage, which is just a skipper engine. The skipper engine is designed for the upper stage of a 2.5 meter diameter rocket, so we're sticking with how engines are supposed to be used in this game now. I'm getting a bit jittery now. I'm a bit paranoid of time. I realise I can't afford to make too many mistakes in this commentary, because otherwise I'll have to keep on doing takes, and then I'll run out of time, and then there won't be a video this Saturday, so I'm really having to pick my words very carefully. So I end up just talking about either A, nonsense, or stuff that's just blindingly obvious, like, here we are using a skipper. The skipper is a good upper stage engine because it's designed to be an upper stage engine. But there we are. That's why you all subscribe to me. Thank you so much, by the way. This is now, like, going to sound really sarcastic, but I do genuinely mean it. Thank you guys for helping me reach 250,000 subscribers. I should be at 1 million right now. Come on, let's face it. But I'll take it nonetheless. Joking, of course. I am eternally grateful for all of your support. I never thought, you know, to me, this is like 250,000 more than I thought I would ever achieve. Actually, no, probably 249,999 more, because my mum did subscribe to me. Probably a mistake, because I did used to use this channel as, like, you know, my archive of Snapchat stories I used to save back in university. So, again, kind of going off the rails here. What am I doing? I'm making a burn at apoapsis, because that's what you do in this game that is called Kerbal Space Program, that released in 2011, I think, for the first time, and is currently getting a sequel released next year. Boy, oh boy. This is a great video. So yeah, I'm not going to perform the entirety of our circularization burn using the skipper stage, even though we do have the Delta V to do it, just because I don't want to leave any debris in orbit in this save file. So we're going to deorbit just before our periapsis leaves the atmospheric border, so that the skipper engine will eventually have its orbit decay and crash harmlessly into the surface of Kerbin. Hopefully not into a city, but I didn't take anything into account when I deorbited it, so hopefully not. And then we can do the rest of the burn using the the burn that gets us to the Mun. The Mun injection burn will be done with the Cheetah engine stage. And the Cheetah engine I really only used because I've never ever used it before, and I kind of want to use it. You know, now Kerbal Space Program 1 is reaching its potential life. I say its effective life potentially, I was meant to say, because Kerbal Space Program 2 looks good. It could be terrible, so we may end up just carrying on with Kerbal Space Program 1. It's difficult to say. I hope not. I hope it's good, but we don't know. So I'm saying potentially Kerbal Space Program 1 is reaching the end of its life, which of course means I feel like I should probably try and use the engines I've never used before, because look at it. Isn't that engine just adorable? And the Cheetah engine is designed for these sorts of burns. The problem was it came out with the Making History DLC, and thus was vastly overshadowed by the Wolfhound engine, which is supposed to represent the engine on the Apollo command module. So obviously a much cooler engine in and of itself, but also a much more overpowered engine as well. You know, it enabled things like, you know, Bradley Wistons to create a Tylo SSTO that doesn't require mining, which was previously impossible. So real testament to not only how good a player Bradley Wistons is, obviously it's a very difficult mission to do, but also a testament of how great the Wolfhound engine is. Maybe it needs a nerf, I don't know, I can't really comment. There is our burn, though, that our Cheetah has done. So our Cheetah is reaching the end of its usefulness for this mission. Of course, like the previous skipper stage, we won't be leaving it stuck in space. We'll let this one harmlessly smash into the surface of the Mun, which is somewhat less inhabited than Kerbin, because it doesn't have any inhabitants that we know of. You know, maybe we're all being controlled by government. Anyway, we've set up the burn to circularize at the uninhabited land of Mun, so we could just time warp down and get ready to execute that burn. Now, I say this a lot, but just in case you might be new to this channel, because this video went viral, it got to the front page of Reddit, and it's #1 trending on YouTube. It's got tens of millions of views, so you guys probably not seen my channel before. So I've got to go ahead and say this thing again. When you're executing a burn, you want to have a look at the estimated burn time, cut it in half, And then when that is the amount of time left for you to reach the maneuver node, that's when you start the burn. For example, because I realized that sounded like a confusing way of saying it in my head. If it's a 30-second burn, you want to start that burn 15 seconds before you reach your maneuver node, is a generally good rule of thumb. Probably some people in the comments might point out that it's not quite exactly half, because you've got to take into account the ship's weight decreasing as you do your burn. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, guys, it is half. So do not worry. Here's a lovely overview, actually, of the interesting lunar terrain at its poles. Look at that massive crater. Definitely going to go there again at some point in another video. Today, though, I thought I'd go to the north pole of the Mun, just because that's where the sun happened to be shining when I arrived. And I thought, for the sake of a video, probably better to go somewhere well lit, so you can easily see the epic race that will unfold before your very eyes. I mean, I was going to actually show a picture of one of my... I found my screenshots. I've still got my screenshots folder from my laptop when I first started playing Kerbal Space Program. So I've still got pictures of all my first craft, my first SSTO, my first space shuttle, all of that good stuff. And I actually took a picture of my mountain Mun lander, touched down on the Mun, but it was very, very dark because it was on the night side of the planet. Moon. I always say that, but it's the dark side. You guys knew what I meant. Well, I was on the dark side of the moon when it happened. So it's very, very difficult to see. However, I did bump up the levels in Photoshop. This is a very roundabout way of saying, here is a picture of the Mun lander that I originally sent down on this kind of mission, all the way back in, I guess, either 2014 or 2015. Maybe I can actually find out the exact date that this picture was taken by quickly just seamlessly opening Windows Explorer and navigating to the screenshots folder. I'm looking for a very black picture because it was very dark. Oh, there it is. Properties. When was it taken? October 2014. So nearly exactly 5 years ago. Man, time does fly, eh? Hey, speaking of flying, I've just looked back at the screen. That's something we're no longer doing because we have touched down. However, not the best location for a race, all being considered. So we're going to just go ahead and tip ourselves up towards the top of this little ridge and land at the top of the hill to get as much speed, potential energy in those karts because they are unpowered. They don't have any brakes either, which is another thing to maybe consider. You know, the safety of Jebediah and Valentina. It's going to be a battle of the sexes, this race. But there you go. Touching down in 3, 2, 1. Lovely little touchdown. And we've got those massive landing legs again, just to add a bit more stability due to the fact we're going to be landing in a potentially unstable area of the Mun, which means they can absorb slightly higher impact speeds than the smaller landing legs. But all that, yep, now that we're on the surface, Jebediah Kerman can go on an EVA and get ready to... Well, originally I was going to have them both board the command seats, and then we just decouple them because those decouplers are set to 0 force separation force, so they shouldn't just slam straight into the surface and get destroyed. They should detach nice and gently. However, I didn't realize at the time, even though I probably should have because it was fairly obvious in retrospect, when the Kerbal sit in those seats, their helmets clip into the fuel tank above them, and so when you detach the carts, they get a bit explodey. So we had to do this. We're going to put both Kerbals in front of their selected racers, their iron horses, and then we're just going to have to board them like this. So here we go. I'm going to try and get them to board at fairly similar times. Here we go, and the race begins. Here we go. And Valentina takes an immediate lead because she boarded her cart first. That does make sense. But Jebediah, not one to give up, is gaining on her very slowly. The destination is that crater over there in the distance on the left-hand side of the screen, just kind of there. Jebediah immediately sees an opportunity. He can cut to the corner, and he bounces into the lead as they come over their first obstacle, this little hurdle here. And where the speed is picking up, Valentina is poised for winning position, but it's just not good enough. Jebediah is storming ahead. Although that being said, Valentina is not far behind. They're coasting towards the crest of this little crater. Another obstacle effortlessly handled by both of our brave pilots. Jebediah descending down this slope, as is Valentina, hot on his tail as they approach the second crest that they need to clear safely without accidentally exploding. And Jebediah, beautiful some great SAS control. Valentina getting a bit cocky there, trying to do a little flip, but it was okay. And Valentina's binned it. She has left her saddle. The cart is now out of control. This is probably all over for Valentina. Jebediah sees a crater and he tries to avoid it, and he's binned it too. But his cart is fine. Oh my goodness, what am I seeing, ladies and gentlemen? Valentina's cart storms out of the blue, out of nowhere, right into the lead. Jebediah Kerman's kart trying to recover, but it's just no use. Valentina is literally clipping through rocks in her victory, and I think it's pretty much all over for Jebediah Kerman as Valentina is blasting way out of physics range, and look at that. She's just done it. She's out of physics range for the Jebediah kart. It's stopped. It is stuck. Valentina somehow won without being in the driver's seat. There's probably a joke about women drivers here somewhere, but I don't want to get demonetized. And with that, the car can gracefully come to a graceful and gentle stop. And there it is, our that was the race. That was my idea for this video. So I hope it was entertaining, and I actually would be quite interested in doing a similar sort of race again. Maybe try and think of other vessels that the Kerbals could race. Leave any suggestions you want down below. Maybe some sort of I can't think of any other means of racing except parachute race, maybe. Who knows? Maybe parachuting through Joule. Who can die first when they get crushed by the pressure? Maybe that's a bit morbid, but something similar, because this is quite a fun thing to do. I had a big smile on my face whilst the cars were drifting down the slopes. There's Valentina. Look at that. That is a true victory flight if I ever did see one. Commiserations to Jebediah. He did put on a valiant show, and to be fair, he did stay in the seat longer than Valentina, so I guess he does deserve some sort of kudos there. And Bill Kerman, finally seeing that the other two have finished their silly little games, can come and do some actual science, despite being an engineer, whatever. He's collected his surface sample. He did do a crew report that I think I've clipped. Oh no, EVA report, I should say, but he's done it there, and he can, of course, plant a flag as well in just a second, because planting flags in this game is literally the only incentive that anyone ever has to visit other celestial bodies, let's face it. There it is there. Thank you, Pastor Matt, for deploying that the wrong direction, so the text is mirrored. Regardless, I think we're pretty much done. We have nearly killed Jebediah and Valentina, and oh, my internet was disabled there. Oh yeah, I remember recording this on the day when they were doing maintenance outside the house, and I was really paranoid about them hitting a power line or something, even though I don't think that's possible. You know, still, I'm a worrisome person, guys. Anyway, there's a lovely little shot of our lander retracting its ladder for the final time. We can get those solar panels retracted as well, just in case I somehow manage to clip them into the ground upon takeoff. And speaking of takeoff, this is it. Here we go. Now on the Mun, you can pretty much start flying flat immediately, although I would throw some caution to the wind, some caution to the vacuum when you do it in a mountainous region like this, because if you're next to like a cliff face, there's a good chance you'll end up just smacking straight into it. So I went up a little bit higher up vertically before doing our gravity turn than I might otherwise do on places like the Mun, even though we are pretty clear of slopes and stuff. See, there's a good slope there actually directly below us. I did think about landing on a really steep slope like that and getting some serious speed for our cars, but then I thought the race would be over quite quickly. I wanted somewhere with a nice gradual slope with a very clearly defined finishing point, even though the finishing point wasn't that clearly defined, I guess, in hindsight. So that's why I went for a more shallow one. In fact, maybe another racing location could be the Dres Canyon. That's got some pretty interesting topographical features there. Well, it itself is a very interesting geographical feature. Geological, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, there's our we're entering Mun orbit. So that's pretty much closing up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm talking like it's the end of the video. How long do I even have left? We've got a little bit while longer, guys. We've got a couple of more minutes. Is there much I need to address? Yeah, yes, there is actually. Normally we enter an equatorial orbit, but because we launched at the poles, we've ended up in a polar Mun orbit. So it's much easier to not bother about trying to get our Kerbin periapsis sorted out from Mun orbit. I'm just going to get an escape trajectory and leave it there, and then we're going to do a retrograde burn once we're in space high above Kerbin. Normally what I do when I'm in an equatorial oh, excuse me, in an equatorial Mun orbit, I try and do my whole burn so that we end up with a good periapsis from Lunar space, but not going to bother this time. I'm just going to do it now. Maybe I could have done it from Mun space, but it would have cost a lot more fuel, so this is just the best way of doing it. In fact, by doing a retrograde burn so close to the Mun sphere of influence that we just left, I've actually kicked myself back towards the Mun, but it's only for a brief moment, so it's not going to have any real impact on our eventual orbit. And look at that lovely shot of Kerbin as we zoom our way down and brace for re-entry. You can see I ditched most of the ablator in this command pod because we're only coming from Mun height, and even though our periapsis is very, very low, much lower than would be safe for maybe a human-rated mission, it's no problem for both our Kerbals. Their G-force meters are barely even twitching, and the ablator didn't really deplete at all. And you know what sounds like the word deplete? Deploy. And that is what our parachute... Okay, that was terrible. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm just going to end the video now. We're about to splash down anyway. Maybe I can sustain it a little bit longer. Splashing down at fairly high speed, like 8 meters per second. Well, it's a bit slower than that, isn't it? Because I use more than one parachute. But it's enough, and it looks a bit cleaner just to have the one parachute on top than lots of little ones dotted around. But there is our splashdown, and I'm going to now leave it there. You'll probably be grateful to hear. On the left-hand side is a link to a video chosen for you by YouTube's automated recommendation algorithm. On the right-hand side is just my most recent upload, so probably a Planet Coaster video if you're watching this on a Saturday. There's also links to subscribe and Twitter and whatever. There's things in the description as well. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.